it's Rob again. It's time for another Member Talks. We're excited today because we have somebody joining us that if you've never opened a social media page of any kind, you probably have never heard of them. But if you have opened any sort of social media site, I guarantee you've seen this guy. You've heard his name. You've probably heard his talks. We have Ryan Thogmartin with us today. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, thanks, Rob, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got you joining. I'm going to put us on a split screen here so we can see you see your face as
Okay.
not the phone line there. But we got you coming in. You're joining us today from Utah. Is that right?
Yeah. Park City, Utah is where I am at today. You know, COVID has allowed us to have our entire office remote, which is, allow us to post up anywhere there's an internet connection.
Yeah, that's cool. And what a better place to go than Park City? Getting any skiing and all that in, or?
Not yet. The resorts don't open till next Friday. I think the first resort opens up.
All right. Well, I bet you it'll be harder to find an internet connection on the slope.
That's exactly right.
Well, I mentioned it a minute ago, Ryan, you got all sorts of stuff going. I mean, you are everywhere. We've got, you're one half of Funeral Nation TV with the Funeral Commander. You're with Connecting Directors, Disrupt Media. I mean, you're just everywhere. We see at conventions. We see all over the internet. How do you keep so active? Where do you get all the energy from?
It's a good question. I don't really know. I mean, I'm fortunate that I get to do what I'm passionate about, which is, makes it easy to have the sustainability to do all. I mean, Funeral Nation is great with the Funeral Commander, Jeff Harbison. That was a show that we started 5 years ago, just as an outlet. We were having a lot of conversations on a weekly basis around things that were happening in the profession, and with Connecting Directors being the news outlet that it is, we had access to a lot of relevant news that, there's a format that happens in video that you can't get through written word from the conversational side. And that was really the driver of Funeral Nation, was to talk about the things that don't get the deep conversations that are important to our profession. How can we take them a little bit further and create conversation at the same time, drive a little bit of controversy too, because that builds a lot of conversation. Jeff can get away with saying a lot of things that I can't because he's been around a lot longer than me. So it's a good yin and yang, but I'm passionate about it. Connecting Directors gave a great platform for us to be able to launch Disrupt and plug in the marketing conversation that's super relevant to the profession. And then we've done a job website, deathcarejobs.com, that's super active. Price My Funeral is a cost estimator that we launched last year, that is just a very simple, basic cost estimator that can plug into any funeral home website. We thought was super relevant, simply with a lot of things that could be coming down the pipe from the FTC on funeral homes requiring to show pricing online. There's a lot of funeral homes out there that show a GPL. I don't know. In the 16 years that I've been in the profession, there's very few GPLs that I could download where I'm going to be able to decode the GPL and build out a funeral and get an accurate price. So sure. I don't think that that's good enough. So we built the cost estimator as a way for funeral homes that, weren't necessarily comfortable just showing price, but being able to give the consumers the option to build out a funeral and still have value attached to it. So being in control of the process, being able to use video to walk that consumer through it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, but it's all things that I'm passionate about. We have a great team and a lot of partners that help make it work. And, it's the profession is super ripe for change. And probably the one thing that COVID has brought that's been positive to the profession is the fact that it's probably ramped up how we embrace technology and how funeral homes are currently using technology, probably about 5 years. Even from a streaming standpoint, less than 25% of funeral homes had the ability to live stream a funeral at the beginning of the pandemic, where now I'm going to say that a majority of funeral homes probably have adapted to some solution for live streaming and making virtual arrangements. And live streaming isn't new. I mean, the first conference, NFDA conference I went to 12 years ago, I mean, there were probably at least half a dozen web streaming companies that were helping funeral homes get set up with live streaming. But there hasn't really been a big demand for it, and now there is. So it's really sped up how we're looking at technology and serving the consumer better, which is great because it's things that, you know, myself and you and Jeff and other talking heads in the profession have talked about for 5 years on the need to embrace technology to meet the consumer where they're at.
Yeah. Are you seeing, talking about streaming and stuff, are you seeing a lot of people using some of the free services like a Facebook Live, or are you seeing trying that and realizing that's probably not the greatest way to stream, rather going and investing into some of these streaming services that are out there? What are you seeing with that?
Yeah, kind of both sides of the coin. I mean, I don't think that the consumer expects a perfect experience through Facebook Live. You're never going to get just the absolute best quality. I mean, you can look at the most highly produced live streams by huge major news corporations and things where they still get buggy, they still cut out, they still delay. That's just something that the consumer expects is going to happen through Facebook Live. So is it a great outlet for funeral homes to live stream across? I'm going to say absolutely yes. And there's a few different reasons why. One is just the community side of it and the engagement conversation possibilities that happen around a Facebook Live event versus live streaming just to the funeral home website. It's a more controlled environment in the funeral home website, but you don't have a lot of the opportunity for people to comment, share stories, and engage, which is a lot of the healing aspects that people aren't getting right now because of gathering restrictions. So there's value in that. Also, Facebook Live video, live streaming Facebook Live services is really increasing the amount of engagement that pages are receiving around other content. So we're seeing clients that are live streaming elevate the engagement of all of their content because live video gets so much exposure. Facebook's going to show it to more people organically. They're going to notify people that follow your page that you're live streaming an event. And then you have that community aspect again from engagement, which spreads that further. So, you know, seeing a small funeral home that, you know, may engage 200 or 300 people per post, engaging thousands on a live stream is extremely, extremely valuable. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily require the funeral home make an $80,000 investment on audio and video equipment for the chapel. You know, we've seen a lot of a mix of funeral homes using services that are already available in the profession that serve, you know, companies that serve funeral homes. We've seen funeral homes use things like Mevo, you know, buying a little $100 Mevo cam that is great HD quality, can swivel, you can direct it towards, you know, someone speaking, you can pan it through your phone using the phone to control it. It live streams directly to Facebook. And you can take it to the graveside. We've seen funeral homes using Zoom. We've seen funeral homes connecting GoPros to a computer, live streaming through that through Facebook. So there's a lot of ways to effectively live stream. I think it really comes down mainly to the audio quality. We expect delays in video sometimes, but the audio quality is the thing that's at the forefront of making sure that you're capturing good audio. And the advances in audio equipment that can attach to, you know, a wired mic, a wireless mic that can go on somebody's lapel. You know, there's a lot of things available. You know, we've helped some of our clients navigate, you know, under $200 being able to live stream great quality, you know, with a camera and a few things off of Amazon for audio. No problem, not a lot of time, go directly to Facebook. Now, a lot of the downfall of that is that it can't be live streamed to the funeral home's website, but a lot of the funeral homes that didn't have live streaming up to this point really didn't have that feature built into their website platform, or if they did, it required a significant investment in audio video quality, which is only right now addressing half the problem. When you have gathering restrictions, you still can't have everybody at the chapel or in the funeral home. So, in states where now we've put, in Utah, there's 10-person gathering restrictions again. So, that really doesn't, live streaming a service from the chapel doesn't address the need when a lot of people are having all of the services at the graveside because there's not as many gathering restrictions when you're outside. So how do you have a solution to live stream the graveside? And there's a number of solutions out there, and navigating through those, it's, again, funeral homes have had to get crafty and go, okay, how can I do this cost effectively but still get good quality, where it doesn't require, a company coming into the funeral home, installing a lot of equipment that gets a really high price tag, plus the delays on people traveling to come into the funeral home to do that. I mean, just a lot of hurdles and a lot of navigation. But that's where I say that it's if anything, it's been this has been valuable because of just the advances in embracing technology and navigating through those conversations has been super valuable. And then seeing the value that comes from live streaming those services, how families can connect, how consumers can connect and have those conversations. I don't think we can ignore that there's been a lot of positive momentum in the profession. And it's a testament to the funeral homes going, okay, look, we've got to do something differently. We can't resist it any longer. The consumer needs this and is demanding it, and we're forced to do it. How are we going to do it the most cost-effective way that makes sense for our situation?
Yeah. I actually had a conversation yesterday with one of our board members, and the comment was that a lot of the people are just still to this day very scared of technology. And what happens if I add a streaming service or somehow add some sort of streaming ability to this? What's going to happen when it doesn't work and I'm on the, you just got to run with it. You got to go with it and do the best you can to serve the family. And if it means, doing it from your cell phone or an expensive investment, I guess that's your choice, but you got to do what's best. And like you said, with gathering restrictions, and we've got those here too in Washington. Currently we're at about 30. I anticipate that could potentially be dropping. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I mean, with that and with winter coming, we're not going to see as many outdoor services. So, that indoor streaming platform might be great. A great way to start. Now a good time to start looking into it for sure, if you haven't done so already. Question
Absolutely.
for you. We were fortunate enough, gosh, what was it, 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, I guess about 6 years ago, to have you out here at our convention in Washington. You came out to Spokane, which is actually where I'm at in the eastern part of Washington. And it's a lot of fun that was the first time I actually got to meet you face to face, but a lot of fun to do that. But at that time, you were talking a lot about Facebook and how Facebook is going to help your business, how it's going to help your funeral home, especially in pre-need planning. It's going to drive business to your website. It's going to drive business to you. Is that still the case? Is Facebook still the number one platform that's going to do all those things and drive business to your funeral home? Or with the creation of all the new different social media sites that are out there, are we seeing that that's shifting to one of the other social sites?
Yeah, good question. Facebook's still king in that regard, and it's not necessarily that it is the most popular network in terms of user base. 2.5 billion consumers every single month using the platform. That's a lot of people. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the demographic that the funeral home has to serve, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to go spend money marketing if the demographic that you're marketing to isn't the right audience for the funeral home. So it's a question we get asked all the time. You talk a lot about Facebook, but what about Instagram? What about TikTok? Is Twitter viable? And the answer to that is Facebook is still king. Is there value that can be grabbed from Instagram? Sure. Is there value that can be grabbed from TikTok? If you're the funeral home that is known for TikTok dances, that's going to get exposure and that's going to be valuable. But are you hitting the right demographic in terms of them actually making a decision and going, okay, this is the funeral home I want my family to use, or I'm ready to pre-plan and this is the funeral home I want my family to use. And a lot of times when we're working with a funeral home, we're getting a portion of an advertising budget, right? Like you mentioned fear. Fear is a big driver that keeps funeral homes from embracing new things. And that's true on the marketing side as well. I had a conversation a couple months ago with a funeral director that said, that decided to sign up with our services. We've been courting them for a while. And they said, I asked, like, what are some of the other marketing things that you're doing? And they were spending $10,000 a year on Yellow Page ads. And this is 2020. And I said, well, why are you doing that? And the response was, well, I bought the funeral home from my father a few years ago. And, my parents are still eating out of the funeral home. My brother and sister are still eating out of the funeral home. And I'm kind of I'm in charge of the funeral home. It's my responsibility to make sure everybody gets fed. If I make a change in marketing and call volume decreases, it's my fault. If I do nothing and I do just the same things we've always done and call volume decreases, well, then it's just the market and that's the way that it is. He's like, fear has kept me from making those decisions. And I think we see that a lot. Like, fear is a driver of why we do things or not do things. So, the best thing that we can do is look at the data. And the data is this. The most profitable consumer for a funeral home to market to is somebody over the age of 45. The largest growing demographic still on Facebook is 55 to 65-year-olds. If we look at that demographic of 45 and older in the United States, 75% of that population are daily active users on Facebook. That is a significant decrease when you go to Instagram. It's only about 35% of that population are daily active users on Instagram. So if I've got, $1,500 to spend, where do I want to go? Well, you want to go where you're going to have the best opportunity to reach the most valuable consumer, get that engagement. And that's really key. Like 80% of funeral home business is relationship driven, according to NFDA. If 80% of the business you're currently getting is driven by some sort of relationship, how can we leave that out of the marketing conversation? And that's really a big problem in the profession. Is we talk a lot about leads. We're guilty of it too. We talk a lot about driving leads because that's the ROI factor of what you're spending. But at the end of the day, the real value of social media comes down to being able to amplify the relationships that you have with your community. When you can engage somebody on a reoccurring basis, there's value in that engagement. For example, before you brought me out to Washington to speak at your conference, we had an existing relationship just through sheer content engagement. You seeing my content, downloading content, engaging with our brand, engaging with me personally. There was a relationship and perception that was established through content engagement without human interaction, face-to-face. It's no different funeral home to consumer, and in those communities, being able to amplify those relationships. The value of the relationship is this. NFDA's consumer survey says that 90.4% of consumers shop 0 to 1 funeral home. So only 9.6% of people are shopping more than one funeral home. Top 2 reasons families chose the funeral home that they did: proximity to that location, and then relationship. So if a relationship is a driver for 90% of the consumers on what funeral home they're going to choose, we can't ignore the platform that was designed to build relationships and engagement. That's the sole reason it was created. Marketers just screw it up by trying to sell on it. It wasn't created to sell, it was created to build relationships. The byproduct of relationships is trust and transparency. When we trust somebody, there's a more of an affinity to use that business when we're in a situation where they need those services. So, is it a great lead driver? Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can engage with a consumer. You can use content to move them down a funnel to a transaction on the pre-need side. We see our clients see an 18 times return per dollar spent inside the Facebook platform. So it's extremely viable when it's used the proper way. And there's a misconception among funeral homes that if I'm just posting content to Facebook, then I'm doing Facebook and we use social media, and people are going to find us and they're going to engage with us just because we're putting content out. That's really so false. There's 2 types of content. There's content that's generic, which is the majority of what funeral homes post. It's grief and inspirational content, Bible quotes, fuzzy happy dog images and things that don't have anything to do with the funeral home or educating about who the funeral home is or why the family should choose a funeral home. And then there's organic content that's focused on that single funeral home, who they are, what they do, how they do it better, their staff, the people that they're serving, the events they're involved in, the businesses they partner with in the community, the community outreach projects that they're doing, grief and inspirational content around virtual grief seminars and grief therapy classes they make available. Like, funeral homes do a lot of things that are specific to them. Creating content around that that's organic to that funeral home is where you engage the consumer and build that trust and transparency. You can pump out generic content every single day of the week and never get any engagement and never drive a family to have a deeper relationship with you. So there's value in creating the right content that builds the relationship and then using that content to push that consumer down the funnel to where when they're in an at-need scenario, you're top of mind, they're going to engage with you. And there's analytics that we can track that show that. There's something called brand retention or brand lift, which means how likely is the consumer to remember the content they engage with on Facebook offline or online 30, 60, 90 days out. And when we can fill a funnel full of high consumers, that a number of consumers that have high brand retention and lift, then that's that top of mind awareness that when they're in need of the services that you provide, there's patterns that they've shown through purchasing on Facebook that relate them to someone that's going to stick with inside the funnel of the brands that they engage with. So there's a lot of data behind it, but yeah, I mean, Facebook's still king. It's still where you're going to get the most interaction and build the viability and build the relationships. Does that mean you should avoid every other network? No, but when you're looking at where you put your time and money, it's better to win on the platform that's going to provide the biggest return first, and then parlay that into, then maybe you start the TikTok channel where you can share content back and forth. And duplicate, that dance video on TikTok may not get a lot of engagement there, but then repositioning it on Facebook may be where you get all the value. So using some of the tools that are available for easy content creation is extremely valuable. And, we help a lot of funeral homes do that. And the opportunity is endless on how to engage the consumer and build trust.
You talked there about organic content, and I don't know, I forgot what you called the fluff is what I
generic.
Generic, yeah. There you go. What about the content where you go onto a funeral home's Facebook page and all you see is an entire timeline of all the obituaries from the last 3 years? You don't see any content whatsoever other than an obituary page. Are you seeing any returns there? Any kind of driving force that says, come to my funeral home, or is it just an outlet for a free obit?
It's just an outlet for an obit, to be honest. And I'm a big proponent. I've created a lot of content around this on, don't post your obits on Facebook. Now, there's a caveat there. If you're in a smaller community where everybody knows everybody, you can get really high engagement on your obituaries, and then they're valuable to keep on Facebook.
Sure.
When we look at pages across the board and we analyze all of the content that's created on funeral home Facebook pages, obits are the single least engaging piece of content. But if you're currently posting them and they're getting good engagement, then it's valuable to keep them there. The reason that they're not valuable if they aren't getting engagement simply just plays to the Facebook algorithms. If you're showing a consumer content that they're not engaging with, Facebook's not going to show them more content from your page. So if they end up following you and Facebook shows them, a series of posts and they're all obits and they don't engage with those obits, Facebook's not going to show them any more content. So if you're creating other valuable content that's showcasing you in the community, your staff, things that you're doing that are valuable, well, they're not going to see that because they didn't engage with the obit content. So we look at it more from an analytics perspective. So there's a couple caveats. I mean, we have clients that post obits because they get very high engagement. They're in smaller communities where everybody knows everybody, and they get high engagement. And also in areas where there's not a newspaper that circulates.
Right.
A lot of the reason that people still get newspapers is because of the obituary. So if you maybe, like, I just had a conversation with a funeral home a couple weeks ago that they're in an area where the newspaper is only once a week. And they're like, well, by the time the obit's in the newspaper, well, the funeral's already happened. So we've conditioned our community to come to our Facebook page for obits. Great. They're getting a ton of engagement. But if all you're putting out is obits, that's not ever going to move the needle. Facebook is not the Field of Dreams. And so, I mean, most people have seen the movie Field of Dreams or have heard the line, if you build it, they will come. Just because you create a Facebook page and put content there doesn't mean that anybody's going to find it or show up and engage there. Facebook's absolutely pay to play. It is free to post content, but if you want anybody to see that content and engage with it and brand build, you got to put money into the platform. The good thing is that Facebook is massively underpriced from an attention standpoint comparative to where most funeral homes spend money marketing traditionally. And if we look at the top 3 ways funeral homes traditionally spend money in marketing, it's newspaper, radio, and television. The average cost to reach 1,000 people through the newspaper nationwide is $32. Cable television, $8 to reach 1,000 people. Radio, $7 to reach 1,000 people. Facebook, we can reach 1,000 people for about $3. The difference is those 1,000 people, for half the price, are extremely, extremely targeted. You can say, Facebook, we want to show this post or this ad to somebody that's over the age of 55, lives within a 5-mile radius around our location, and likes these other things on Facebook, and they're things that would put them in that end of life. You can geo-fence around your local hospital, and anyone that's traveling in and out of that hospital can see an ad if they map those demographics to who you want to target. When you can do that and spend half the cost, I mean, it's a no-brainer because you can really pinpoint. So, obits can be valuable if they're getting engagement. If they're not, then they don't make a lot of sense, but they're never going to be the single content that's going to drive another family to your funeral home because they saw an obit on Facebook. That's just not going to happen.
Sure. Well, we're getting drastically close to Christmas. We're just a couple weeks away. What's your thoughts on advertising Facebook or any other way Christmas and the holiday season and your funeral home? What do you have ideas on that? Do you see that people are kind of moving more towards the holiday type season, or are they really focused still on the Christmas? I know some folks, we don't want to say Christmas, some we do, and I don't want to get into any kind of hurtful discussion here about which direction we go, but just on a generalized basis, I mean, what would you suggest?
We leave it up to the client, to be honest with you. From our company, when we send out Christmas gifts to our clients and the content that we'll create around Christmas, we'll say Merry Christmas. That's just the way I believe. And there's probably people that are offended that we say Merry Christmas and not Happy Holidays, but I mean, it is what it is. So we really leave it up to the specific client. Like, they know their community, they know what their beliefs are, and that's really the deciding factor. But creating content around the holidays from Thanksgiving to Christmas and New Year's, there's a lot of opportunity for funeral homes to capture attention and engage. And, there's a couple of different things that we're heavily focusing on with customers around this time, a season that we're in. And it's really been influenced kind of by just what's happened in the world this year. I mean, there's no way to deny it. It's been a funky year. It's been wacky. There's a lot of, from hurricanes to fires to racial injustice to pandemics. It's like someone just unloaded the gun on just craziness. And we can't ignore that, right? That's just, the value of social is the ability to be real, to be transparent. And if you look at most communities, there's a couple businesses or entities that are cornerstones in communities. And dominantly, those are going to be churches and then funeral homes. I mean, funeral homes are pillars in a community where people are known to gather. It's a somber time. And if we can kind of flip the script a little bit on how funeral homes engage in these times, we're in a time period where it's a lot of bad, right? It's just a lot of things that if you don't have a great positive mindset, you're not able to kind of block out noise, depression, mental illness, things are rising because of just what's happening. The funeral home has a real opportunity to influence the community in a way that's uplifting. So when we look at this, there's a couple different things that we focus on. And one of those, the value of social right now is that since March 11th, when this was a global pandemic, right. March 11th, engagement on funeral home Facebook pages that are in our ecosystem have increased 23%. Private messages sent to a funeral home Facebook page have increased 46%. Now, it tells us a couple of different things. The consumer's engaging around a funeral home more now than ever because they can't physically go to the funeral home for calling hours. So the only way they can engage is online. Two, those private messages, an increase of 46% in private messages. These are not private messages that are, you know, what's the link for Mrs. Jones' obituary, or I can't find this obituary, where is it? Like, we get those. Those are sifted out. You know, those are run-of-the-mill every week, every day kind of questions. We've taken more first call notifications through Facebook Messenger in the last 6 months than in the last 3 years combined. Literally, mom just passed away. We don't know what to do. That is a message that is reoccurring that we get. And if a funeral home's not monitoring and engaging, or having a company like us on board where we're continually monitoring that for them, and our average response time is less than 15 minutes, they're going to miss that opportunity because that family is going on to the next place. If that family is already in the ecosystem of that funeral home, well, that's where they're going to go first, and they're comfortable communicating in that way. So that increase in engagement really creates an opportunity for the funeral home to put a lot of good and positivity back in. So it's a long way of saying that with the 200 plus funeral home brands that we manage and cemetery brands in North America, we're focusing a lot of the holiday content around things that you wouldn't expect to see from a funeral home. And I'll give you just one example. We have a full-time animator on our team, which gives us a good skill set. Our in-house animator, not freelance, full-time, 100% disrupt. And she's able to create a lot of cartoon type content that's lighthearted, that's fun. And one of the things, and I don't know how old you are. I think we're somewhat close in age, but I remember growing up, remember the Highlights magazine that you could subscribe to? And Highlights was the thing that I looked forward to getting in the mail every month as a kid. And where I really found Highlights was when I would go to our dentist office. Like when I was a kid and go to the dentist office, you're in that waiting room for freaking ever. Highlights always had the pictures. That's right. Me too. And it was scavenger hunts, right? Like there was this picture in there that was drawn, and you would find all these objects hidden inside that picture. And, you know, our creative team has done a great job. And my wife heads up our creative team in those meetings, and really in touch as a mother, we know what moves kids, and in touch with grandparents. Like there's an empathy that, sorry to say, that women have that a lot of men just don't. So analytically looking at things differently. And the conversation was, you know, I remember my grandparents having the Highlights magazine and sitting with my grandma and finding those things in that drawing and then coloring the picture. And they're like, okay, what if we created content like this for a funeral home? And we made it available for people in the community to download. And the dominant demographic that's engaging with funeral homes is over the age of 55. So most likely they have grandchildren, where when we're kind of restricted the gathering with just our family, this could be a great activity that grandparents and grandkids could do. So creating that type of content that can be downloaded, people color it. We're running contests where they re-upload it as a comment to that post on the funeral home page, and they're sending out little gifts to grandkids. And it's just, you know, to be able to try to create content that engages the community together, that's different than the norm. It's uplifting, it's valuable. Right now, a lot of our funeral homes are running what we call a Thankful series, where for the entire month of November, every week, they're putting out video content that they'll shoot with a smartphone. And that's just it. Like, you don't need anything more than a smartphone to shoot video in a funeral home. And, you know, our clients will shoot that video, they send it to our team, our video editors edit it, we put the logo on it, the title page, you know, all the things that we need for it to be highly engaging. And it's just their staff. Every week they highlight a different staff member, and that staff member talking about what they're thankful for this year, what they're going to do to gather with their family. And it's really valuable because I think that if we get in so much negativity, we can't possibly get on Facebook or any other platform without inundated with negative content that can really affect you mentally.
Sure.
If there's a break in that content where you're hearing things that are positive, and that starts to create kind of a spiral, a wave of positivity, because Facebook will give you more of what you engage with.
Yeah.
Like if anybody watched The Social Dilemma, everything from a data perspective in The Social Dilemma is accurate. That is how the algorithms work. It's also the benefit of social media. It was spun in a very negative way, but if you engage with positive content, you will get more positive content in your newsfeed. If you engage with negative content, you're going to get more negative. It's just the way the algorithms work, because they want to give you what's going to keep you online longer. So when we can break that cycle, and it influences other businesses in the community. We have funeral homes challenging other partners in the community to do the same type of thankful series and post that. It's just a different way of thinking. And that's the value of going, okay, yes, we're a funeral home, but we're so much more than that to a community. And historically, funeral homes have been more than just a place where people gather to celebrate the loss of a loved one. They're pillars in the community. They are generous. They're kind. Let's just amplify that, man. Like, the world needs it. So that's really where I encourage funeral homes to go for the holidays, is thinking outside the norm of, yes, let's do the things that are accustomed to, how to deal with the loss of a spouse around the holidays, or dealing with, how to talk with children about grief around the holidays. Like, those are important topics. And there are ways to create that content that give value back to the consumer. Holiday remembrance services are another big piece of the puzzle. We've got a client in your neck of the woods that we've had a very lengthy conversation over the last couple of weeks of just how to navigate the holiday remembrance service that's always been so valuable to funeral homes. And it's a way for them to gather families every year, 300 or 400 people in a chapel at a time. Guess what? We can't do that this year. So how do we still give that to families? And even, are there ways to give it to families this year virtually where we can even make it more interactive and valuable? And one client, we're working with them on a drive-through, a physical drive-through holiday remembrance service where they can leave video messages for families. So in trying to encompass the entire community in this and not just the families that were served, the value of that is that families are going to get positive affirmations about their loved one, things that they would have heard if they had the holiday remembrance service. They can share memories about their loved one. They're going to have Christmas carolers there in their parking lot with a PA system. So if people want to park and cars social distance and listen to that. The other suggestion that was thrown out, and things what we're kind of navigating through with them, is a lot of churches aren't going to be doing Christmas Eve services this year because of gathering again. And I know just in our local community, our local church on the Christmas Eve service would always have a professional photographer available, because it's a lot of times where you've got everybody in your family together that one time of the year, you're all dressed nicely, and you can get a great family photo. And I know a number of families that relied on that every year for their family photo. What if the funeral home provides that because the church isn't going to be able to make that available this year? So that's one of the things we've worked through, like with this drive-through funeral. What if, or not drive-through funeral, I'm sorry, drive-through holiday remembrance service. What if you had somewhere where that family could pull off, they could social distance with the photographer, but still get a family photo with a background set up and have lights? Like, it's a great opportunity for that local photographer. It's something else of value that consumer is going to get. And you're going to be getting an email address from every family member that wants a copy of that photo. So now there's data that marketers like me can exploit and do what we do. So there's a lot of value this year. Yes, things are taken away. Yes, things can't happen like they normally do. But if we get a little creative and we look at the crux of what a funeral home is trying to provide, outside of just body disposition. What is the real value to the community? The opportunities are infinite through this holiday season. And that's really what I would like to encourage. You said this was probably going to come out in December. So, if you're looking for ways to amplify what it is that you already do and connect with consumers at a different level, the opportunities are endless, virtually, of things that you can do that people can still get value from, even though there's not a need conversation. And believe me, as a digital marketer, there's not 1 ounce of me that thinks that a digital engagement is more valuable than a need conversation. Don't think that I'm saying that. The second we can gather again safely and no one's going to worry about it, we absolutely need to. But in this time, we've got to ramp up what it is that we're doing to provide for our community members and still be that pillar when people can't gather or physically come into our location. We've got to go meet them where they're at and give them value. And Facebook provides the perfect opportunity. The tools are there, and just encouraging funeral homes to look at content, not as a funeral home, just as a normal consumer. What do I want to engage with from brands? What's going to be valuable to me as a consumer, and how do we apply that to our business?
Well, some would say the good news, I believe it's the good news, is even if this pandemic ended today, right now, the stuff that we're talking about will not stop. It will not end. It's
That's
here.
right.
It's in place. It's now being used to a point where I don't want to say trained our communities, but they start to expect these things. And we have to step forward, get outside of that I'm afraid of technology, move forward and just provide these services. That's what's going to keep us relevant moving forward, not just disposition of the remains, but actually providing service to our families. Ryan, this has been great, and I could sit here and talk to you forever. I really could, but we're getting a little bit long. So I'm going to ask you: can you share with us how do we get in touch with you if we want to hear more? If we want to, I know we can get online and look at connecting directors, and certainly watch you guys on YouTube, TV, see you out there.
Yeah.
But how do we get in touch with you one-on-one to talk more about this stuff?
A couple different ways. Just honestly, if you search any social platform for me or for Disrupt Media, you're going to find us and be able to connect that way. Whatever's comfortable for you, pick up the phone and call. Phone number's on there. Also, you can message. That's fine. Like however you want to engage. If it's just commenting, search for me or search for Disrupt Media, and you'll be able to find us. Our website is disruptmedia.co, not .com, so it is .co. And then also, I've got a text platform, which is a new way I've tried to connect more one-on-one with the profession, with people that are in our circle. But it's really what we've used as a Q&A type network. Everyone's got a mobile phone. We're conditioned to text message, and even if you don't have a Facebook profile or you're not on social networks and you want to connect and you want to do so via text, I'll give you that number, and I don't know if your team can throw it on the screen or in the description, but that number is 740-273-6627, and you can text that number and you'll be a part of my text community. It doesn't cost anything. I send out messages that are valuable. I send out some motivational content. We do a lot of giveaways to keep people engaged, but it's really a platform where you can ask a lot of questions. And I can actually reply. Like it goes straight to my phone and we can engage. So anyone that says, man, they're really hard to get a hold of. Yeah, no, there's not that problem. 1,000 different ways to get a hold of me. You can put my email address up there too, Ryan@disruptmedia.co. However you want to engage, we make it available. We have an 800 number if you want to talk by phone. There's a million different ways to engage, but just search Disrupt Media and you'll find 1,000 ways to get in touch with us.
Perfect. Well, Ryan, thanks again. Thanks for coming on and being a part of this with us, this Member Talks. It's fun to see you again. I know the last time I got to see you was back at NFDA, and that was a lot of fun seeing you there, running into you. But I'm looking forward to the day where we can get back together again and sit down and talk one-on-one. So thanks again, though, for coming on and being a part of of this.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I think this is a great thing that you're doing for your association and a great member benefit. So kudos to you and your team, thinking outside the box of just another way to deliver content and deliver value. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. We'll talk to you next
Thank
time.